I know with Assassin's Creed Mirage only being out for a few months, it's probably way too soon to start talking about a sequel, but as I've stated many times, I really enjoyed this game. I think Ubisoft Bordeaux did a tremendous job with what they were given, and I think a lot of the community would love to see what they can do if given the opportunity to make another AC game, only this time with a bit more time and money to do so. They've already built a really solid foundation in Mirage that would make it rather easy for them to expand and improve upon in a potential sequel. And by sequel, I don't mean another Basim game, although I wouldn't mind that either, as I really like Basim and there's still more that can be explored with his character. But by sequel, I mean another game developed by Ubisoft Bordeaux, made in a similar style to Mirage, that aims to build and improve upon what's in that game, as many video game sequels do. I wouldn't consider Codename Red a sequel because that's being made by a completely different studio in Ubisoft Quebec and is going to be a very different type of game from what Mirage is. But I truly believe that if the team at Ubisoft Bordeaux was given the opportunity to improve on what they did in Mirage with more time and resources, the end result would be very special, as they've already demonstrated that they have a great understanding of what makes a good stealth-focused Assassin's Creed game. They've also shown how adept they are at receiving feedback from the community and actively trying to implement it into the game, with numerous changes before launch, and of course just recently with Mirage's New Game Plus update that also implemented parkour eject improvements originally created by a mod. So knowing that, I'm very confident they would be able to take all of that feedback from Mirage as a whole and apply it to a sequel where they'll actually have time to add and make the necessary changes. So my goal today is to highlight what I think are the best changes and new additions Ubisoft Bordeaux could make in a sequel to Mirage, creating what I believe could potentially be the Assassin's Creed game we've long dreamed of. So let me start with what I think should be the #1 priority in a Mirage sequel, and that's making improvements to the parkour. Now make no mistake, I still like parkour in Mirage, especially with the new eject update, it's even better, but I know it can still be a lot better than what we have currently, and I trust with the right direction and time, Ubisoft Bordeaux can bring parkour back to the level of some of those older games, and potentially even better. And I think if you'd ask the AC community, if there was one area of Mirage that you'd like to see improved upon in a sequel, a vast majority of them would say the parkour. Now, how exactly would Bordeaux accomplish this? Well, for one, it would probably need to be entirely revamped. It's time to abandon this parkour and movement system from the RPG games. They did their best to make it feel and play better in Mirage, but I think to ultimately get parkour to where it needs to be, you essentially have to restart. Perhaps you could use the parkour and movement of Unity as a foundation. I don't really know if that's possible, but that would definitely please a lot of people. But the ejects definitely need to be improved as well. Like I said, they're already a lot better with the update, but I want full freedom when it comes to side and back ejects like the original games. Have it so you can side and back eject even if there's nothing nearby to eject to. If back ejecting means having the player jump backwards and plummet to their death because there's nothing to grab onto, let them do it. That's how it was for a long time in this series. The games didn't hold your hand or only let you make safe jumps. There weren't limited thresholds you had to meet in order to make an eject. Bringing ejects back to how they were in those original games will go a long way in improving the general parkour experience. And again, if you can have some fancier special moves and animations you can trigger like Unity as well, that would do a lot for the game's parkour as well. Unity's parkour is definitely not the best in the series when it comes to mechanics, but it is when it comes from an animation and visual standpoint. It's the most realistic and visually appealing, and if you could somehow get a combination of the visual flair and aesthetic of Unity's parkour with the mechanics of the earliest entries, I think you have the peak Assassin's Creed parkour system. Now, my next want for an AC Mirage Mirage sequel improves another area of the game, while again I don't think is bad, is still a bit simple and could definitely do with some improvements, and that's the combat. I think you can keep the core of this current combat system in Mirage, but there needs to be more weapons, moves, and combos. Just build off of what you already have and add some much needed depth and variety to it. I'm thinking this combat system could get the kind of jump we got from AC1 to AC2, where you got way more weapon types, some special moves, and more polish overall. I'd like to see a Mirage sequel with heavy weapon types like axes and maces, along with the traditional swords and daggers. I want to see Hidden Blade combat return. My goodness, it's been way too long since Hidden Blade combat has been possible. The last game to have it was Rogue. I think the base of the combat in Mirage is decent, but with a lot more added depth and variety to it, it could be so much better. Especially if we get more of those incredible finishing animations for each weapon. And within the same subject, I think if the sequel could add some more enemy types, that would definitely help improve the combat as well. Another clear area I think can be expanded upon even further in a sequel are the customization options. I love some of the customization options in Mirage. I think a lot of the outfits look really good, and I really like that they brought back the dyes, but all in all, there's not a ton of options. I believe there's around 16 to 17 total base game outfits, and the amount of dyes per outfit are rather limited. Some have none, and others only have like 2 to 4 options. In a sequel, I'd like to see more unlockable outfits, more colors for the dyes, and have the dyes be universal so they can be equipped to any outfit. Customization is typically something that gets expanded in video game sequels, and I think that's how you do so for a Mirage sequel. Now, the next thing I'd like to see would further improve on what I already believe to be one of the best parts of Mirage, and that's the tools. Firstly, I'd like to see new tools added in a sequel. I already think there's a really good selection of tools in Mirage, so if they could add like 2 or 3 more in a sequel, I think that would be great. As for what they could possibly add, I think you look to the older games for inspiration. I'd love to see the rope darts make a return. I'd really love to see the Phantom Blade come back as well, but the throwing knives already serve a similar purpose. Depending on the time period the game is set in, you could bring back the pistols or a crossbow. There's a lot they could do. I'd also like to see more tool upgrades and modifications. I absolutely love the tool modifications in Mirage and all the different builds and combinations you can make with them, and just having more modifications and upgrades for each tool I think would be a pretty simple way to improve that system even further. Another part of the progression that I believe could use some expansion is the skill tree. The skill tree in Mirage is pretty small, but I do like a majority of the skills you get and how the progression works. But I think if they do a sequel, this absolutely needs to be something that's expanded on, because you can't just have players unlock the exact same skills. That would be really lame. In fact, I like it when sequels already start you with all the skills you unlocked in the previous game, and then have a completely new skill tree full of new unique skills. So to me, that's another easy area for a potential sequel to improve on. Now I know some people might wish for a longer game if they do make a sequel to Mirage. Some people might have thought Mirage was too short, but personally I was very satisfied with the length of Mirage at around 25 to 30 hours to do most of everything. But what I would like to see be a bit longer are some of the side quests. Most of the side content revolves around finding treasure or doing contracts, which I think is fun and you can definitely keep in a sequel, but I'd like to see more of the story-based, longer side quests like the Tales of Baghdad. There weren't that many of them in Mirage, and I think having either more of those quests or making them a bit longer and more fleshed out could majorly improve the side content. Maybe have them revolve around some of the main story characters so that you can spend more time with them, learn a little more about them, and flesh them out where there wasn't much time or more space for that in the main story. I'd actually really like to see something similar to the Tales of Tsushima quests from Ghost of Tsushima. They're all focused around some of the story's main characters, and they each have these side quest arcs of around 5 to 9 missions spread out throughout the game. I think Assassin's Creed could really benefit from structuring some of its side missions like that, making them longer, more fleshed out, and more important to the main story. And finally, something I feel is necessary if Ubisoft Bordeaux is given the opportunity to make a sequel to Mirage is having more motion captured cutscenes. I think the cutscene quality is one of my biggest issues with Mirage as a whole, to be honest, and there's very few scenes in the game that utilize motion capture. I'm not sure if this was because of time or budget constraints, but I'd hope in a sequel, Bordeaux would have the time and resources to utilize motion capture more, allowing these cutscenes to look significantly better. Ideally, I'd like for there to be motion capture in all the main story cutscenes and a select handful of the side quests too, similar to the older games or even more recently with Origins. And on a similar note, I'd like to see improved character models as well. But that about wraps up everything I'd like to see in an Assassin's Creed Mirage sequel. Let me know if you feel I missed anything, or what you would like to see in a potential sequel as well. I didn't really talk about the story much, aside from the cutscene quality, because who knows what kind of setting or characters this game would even follow, whether it's another game with Basm or a completely new time period. Regardless though, I'd obviously still like to see a story focusing on the Assassins and the Brotherhood, similar to Mirage. Again, I've been saying it ever since Mirage came out, but I'm really hoping Ubisoft Bordeaux gets the opportunity to make another Assassin's Creed game, because I already really enjoyed Mirage, and I think they could very easily improve on it further in a sequel. Not to mention with more time and resources, since they were only given about 2 years to develop Mirage. On top of that, I'm also sure it's a bit easier to develop a game when you already have a solid foundation from the game you worked on previously. Rather than completely starting from scratch in some areas of the game, you can build off of your previous work. And hopefully, if this sequel did happen, we'd get largely the same people at the studio working on the game, and hopefully Steven Boudon is the creative director once again, because he seems to really care about making an authentic Assassin's Creed experience and values community feedback. So fingers crossed there, but as always, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and considered subscribing to the channel if you're new. And other than that, thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day, Assassins.